Good morning. My name is Kristin Louise, and you're listening to The Up. I'm here with Kathy George, and we're here to talk about an exciting day in her life and her new book. I had to rush this interview. Kathy's a friend of mine through She Rises Studios, and I had to rush this interview because I found out her book is coming out. Well, her book just came out in electronic form and is coming out soon in paperback. Kathy, welcome to The Up. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I really love everybody that I've met through the She Rises community. It's been fascinating, just the depth and breadth of people that are there. And anybody, in my opinion, and I know I'm biased because I'm also an author, but anybody who takes the time and the discipline to sit down and put their story in words, whether that be spoken or written for that matter, anybody that has that discipline and wants to put that into the universe, that's something that I want to know what's up about. So that's why we're here today. I want to talk about your book, and I want everybody just to know briefly kind of your past and your entrepreneurial journey, because I know that you haven't been doing this too long. So just tell us a little bit kind of what sparked you into doing what you're doing now.
Life.
Yeah,
my,
amen.
my business is very much field work as I tried to figure out my own life.
Sure.
Um, I I am a bereaved parent. Prior to that, my husband had some medical crises. Then, of course, our son passed away, so that there was
Yes,
some upheaval there.
absolutely.
And then a few years after that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So there
Oh,
was another round of there. And then I no sooner got out of breast cancer treatment and ended up with facial paralysis. So apparently, it was just another level of here's a different way to grieve.
oh
How
man.
about this way? How about you try this way? So, um, so that's what's brought me to my business, really, is just figuring out what works for me, my nervous system, and understanding that everybody grieves differently and everybody's journey is different, and but there's some internal resourcing, and when we get to that, that's where the
Yeah.
magic is.
And what I love, there's several things. And I did prepare and go through not just your socials, but go through some things about grief. Because if you're not somebody that's experienced something, I'm super empathetic. And so I do want to read a little bit, not just your own work, but I want to read a little bit more about grief because I want to have a good conversation with you about it, right? And so I haven't lost a child. And I can imagine as a parent, that is one of the biggest fears of any human parent or non-human. I can imagine, animals the same way, but like I can imagine that that is traumatic to like the nth degree. And what I love humans just in general, Kathy. Like I'll be honest with you, humans. I'm already starting to cry because I'm so empathetic. I told myself I wouldn't cry, but it's okay. I am very sensitive. One of the things that kind of was my claim to fame back in the my internet bring up was blogging about being a highly sensitive human, and through that experience, I realized how many other highly sensitive humans there were. So, has that been cathartic for you as a person grieving? And obviously, nothing is going to bring your son back as much as we want that. Nothing is going to do that, and we know that. So, we have to kind of choose functionality because we can't go backward. Like, there's nothing that we can do, and that's a terrible reality that I know you've had to face. But is that a cathartic part of your experience as you help others endure these hard days?
Absolutely. Like I feel, and I, it's I have to share a picture of Trev briefly,
Yes,
but
please.
this will be Trevor. Um, and yeah, like my day and helping other people in loss is a way to feel closer to Trevor. And he is in every part of my business, reclaiming hope. Again, that's my field work. Like that's
Yeah.
what I had to find a way to reclaim hope in my own life because I still am a human being having this experience.
And
And I
you
have two
always
other
will be.
children on earth,
Yes.
so I couldn't just give up to the loss and give in.
Because
I couldn't.
life goes on, and it's hard, and it seems insensitive. My grandmother, it's not the same. I'm not likening this to losing a child, but my grandmother's the closest person I've ever lost to me. And it was devastating, especially with me being so sensitive. It was devastating. And I had 4 months of warning. Like I knew it was coming. And so it's a completely different experience, right? But that's the only thing I can liken it to. And it was traumatic, to say the least. And that was just in 2019. So I was an adult when that happened. And we think about losing people like grandparents. They should go first. You're never ready for it, maybe, but they're older than us. And that's the natural flow of life. What I love about humans, though, and especially as I dug into your story, there's people that sit down and there's people that just let that grief consume them. And I understand it's hard. I get it. But then there's people that take that torch and they figure it out and then they pass it along. And I love that you're taking such a hard thing and such a real thing and you're sharing that love and that light with other people. And I bet it's probably not easy on a day-to-day basis. So tell me kind of what your practice is like.
Well, practice meaning my own practice work or within my work?
Within your client work.
Okay, within my client work. Well, a lot of people come to me already knowing high level about grief. So
Sure.
while I can do that, I am a certified through David Kessler's
Yeah.
grief educator program. So among other certifications, but I am certified as a grief educator. So I could share education about grief. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned and what I really like to help other people understand is there is a level of nervous system disruption that happens when you experience a death, especially when it's a death of a child.
Sure.
And many grievers aren't even aware that their grieving process is blocked by this dysregulation of nervous system. And I don't want to use the technical term, but it feels like you're constantly bracing for the next bad thing. You feel like you're not safe. Like you literally, in the beginning, like I'm a pretty good meditator now, but in the beginning, there was no way that I could sit for 20 minutes and just, there was just no way. There was no safety in me to be able to do that, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
I was hyper vigilant, constantly waiting for the next bad thing to happen. If my husband would go get mail from the end of the driveway and it was a minute and a half, I was like running to the door. Is he okay? And when we live in that state of constant bracing, everything is impacted. Nothing is unscathed. And so that's really where I feel my strongest. It's a gift of the loss that I earned, that I gained, and where I feel like I can share with others. And I'm trained in reconsolidation, so I can help them with the traumatics, and that to me is like you get that in motion, and suddenly your ability to see the potential is different. Your ability to feel that hope is different. And you feel like you're grieving effectively. And I'm not going to ever tell a client that they will ever stop grieving, especially their child. You don't. But you will be able to get to a point where you can look and think about who you're missing. For me, it's Trevor. And I can smile and I can be so grateful that he was in my life for 6 years.
And it's something that you want to talk about and not something that you're trying to avoid. I can imagine that is a huge shift.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
So we have a little girl in my community, and she's a middle schooler and fought a very, very brave fight with cancer, and unfortunately just passed, I believe it was last week. And, everybody's touched by that. I never met her personally, but I know many people that had classes with her. My babysitter here for the summer, it was a friend of hers. And, in a small town, I'm just here in small town America in the middle of the Missouri. And I want to reach out to a family that's lost a child, but I've never personally lost a child. So, of course, they're going to list things that I can donate to. Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. There's a meal train. Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Those are practical things that we can all do. But as somebody who's experienced that, what's another thing that really helped you as people reached out and you were grieving?
Talking about Trevor. I think there was a tendency that people were afraid to bring it up because if I looked like I was having a good day, they were like, oh, I don't want a reminder, trust me, there is not a day that goes by that he hasn't been in some degree on my radar. Right?
Absolutely.
I don't need a reminder to remember Trevor. He is always, always on my heart and on my mind. Or, there was a time when my husband and I were both working full-time jobs, demanding jobs. And this is after Trevor had passed away. And yet we still had a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old that we were trying to parent. Those were some hard nights, hard days, because we never had a break. We never, you know what I mean? We didn't have really any support around us to give us even a break I couldn't come home and let myself fall apart.
Right.
I came home knowing that I had to get dinner on the table and then parent a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And it was difficult. So really those things, whatever you can do to take the edge off for a family in crisis like that, provide a gift card so that they don't have to figure out dinner.
Yes. And those are, to me, those are the bare minimums. I see that meal train email come out from the church and I'm like, oh yes, whatever I can do practically is amazing. But a lot of times, like you said, people don't know should I bring up the loved one? Should I not bring up read the room, but not all of us can read the room. And I think the biggest thing is there's no wrong or right thing, but you can't not act. You can't just ignore it. It has to be acknowledged in some way, because I understand some people are going to be more avoidant just in their natural tendency because it's not comfortable, right? That's not a comfortable thing that you experienced either, is it? But I would much rather make myself feel uncomfortable for you or for somebody who's lost and bring up a memory or ask, that's another thing that I read as I was doing a little research for this interview. Ask for a memory. If you don't have a memory with a loved one, ask them for a cherished memory, because at least that's going to be a bright spot and they can talk about that person.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And just those things, as humans, there's just so many bad things we could focus on in the world right now if we wanted to, but just those little things are how I think we can give each other just a moment of hope. And that makes a huge difference if we all do it. You know what I mean? If we all just do that one little thing. And those are the things I've really cherished, especially in this season. I feel like this whole podcast project, I didn't know where it would land. You start a business, you start a podcast, you write a book, and you don't know, when you sit down at the keyboard to start, you don't know where you're going to end up. And you have an idea of what the story is going to be, but you don't know where it's going to take you. And so I feel like in this season, one of the things, every single episode has had a really great practical takeaway or two for people. So I hope for those listening, if you haven't experienced something like this, first of all, I love the fact that you never want to forget and you have Trevor on your mind every day. It's not something that should be a goal where you don't. Then I'm, if you're healthily processing emotion, you should be able to think of Trevor in the best possible ways every day, and he should be part of your life. And so I think that's, I understand some people struggle through that, and there's different points of grief that you could really educate us on, but nobody needs a lecture today. You know, what we need is like, hey, humanity, give me a break here. How can I help somebody out? You know, how if I'm struggling with this, if somebody happens to be listening and they know somebody, they could direct them to you, you know, for more of that. But when it comes to the book, you know, there's your business and then there's the book. So you've got your client work and then you've got this beautiful baby that you just birthed. I like to think of books like our children as well. Because it's such, if you've ever written a book, especially if you're somebody that's written a book to help others, you know, sometimes it's just for fun and that's great. And it's just, you know, a fiction book or whatever, that's fine too. But if you're somebody like you or I that had something practical in their life and they wanted to really help humanity, it is a labor of love and it is a birth. So you just had birth this week, Kathy. Let's celebrate your baby. The baby is an ebook.
I feel great.
Yeah, you look great, Kathy. You did it in style. So let's talk about the labor of love behind the birth, because you have, remind me when your physical copy of your book is available.
August 12th.
Okay. So coming right around the corner, you've got your electronic version out. If anybody, and I will link all of this, everybody, so don't worry, it'll be in the description. But tell me what it meant to you. One thing that I want to note about Kathy too, just because I thought it was fantastic. She's so busy in her life, being a mom, being, you know, having her clients and being a practitioner. She hasn't even looked at how her book's doing. I asked before the interview, I said, girl, how's it going? It came out on Tuesday. And she's like, I haven't even looked. And that's because you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it to go in and sell it. You're doing it to help people. And I could see that in your heart when we met, you know, in this bigger group of women. I could just see that. It shines through. And these are the people that I want to know more about. So thank you for gifting me with the interview. And let's talk about your birth. So let's talk about the labor of love behind your newest project, maybe not your biggest one. What made you do it, Kathy? What made you write and sit down and do the work?
Well, there were definitely some key people in our lives. And again, the book is actually written by both myself and my husband.
Yes,
Peter.
That's right.
He's working his job while I'm doing this. But and so there were some key people that had always nudged us and said, would you consider writing? And I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. It never was something I really thought I wanted to do.
Okay.
And then really I began to understand, and you touched on it a little bit, how society really misunderstands grief.
Yes.
Okay. I also have a degree in clinical mental health counseling, a master's. And going through that program, I can tell you, grief came up once, if not twice.
Not enough.
And so I have done a lot of work on my own to better understand the process. And again, I have already said that, this is very much a field work of my own existence. Yes. But so the goals with the book, the Tapestry of Loss, were to help me understand and connect what was happening in my life and help other people, other grievers, understand what was happening in their life. And the book can be a little bit scholastic. I will be the first to admit that, because I had just come off of finishing my degree in clinical mental health.
Yes.
Furious that it didn't talk about grief.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we are going to inform people,
I love that so much.
And then the other thing that I really didn't want to write it just from my perspective, because this was my journey, but my husband was along with it. It was our journey. It was our son. And when I tell you, there were no 2 days that we grieved the same way.
Absolutely.
And I felt that was important to bring to the book. So the book is actually written in sections with my perspective and then his perspective on different functional topics. And I love that about the book, because when I read it, my perspective and his perspective, it's like going like this. Some days.
And neither one of them right. That's the beautiful thing. There's no right way to go about it, is there?
Right. And so it was just, and I think that's what's important. There's some, I think the stats about marriages when they go through like something like this are much better today than they were 10 years ago. But there's still some scary stats about a family facing the loss of a child and how they navigate it from a married unit perspective. And I'm not going to say my husband and I did it perfect either, because we didn't, right. And that's talked about in the book as well. Yeah. So those were my goals with Tapestry of Loss. The other thing that I love about it is there's chapters are kind of, I mentioned that it's by function, like the chapters are by function. And there is some repetition, because my goal was, if somebody picked up my book and they're in grief, their resources are limited.
Sure.
In terms of being able to sit and read and take in information. So I wanted a quick introduction, a little bit of scholastic, if you will, so they understand what's happening within them. Yes. And then some actionable items. And I wanted it like each chapter could stand alone, so that they could immediately take those actionable items and use some of them in their journey. That was my goal, like a field guide.
I love that, a field guide. No, I love that, though. First of all, your heart just shines through of wanting to help people. And obviously you have a master's, in clinical, what did you say? Clinical mental health. Okay, I knew it wasn't psychology. I just couldn't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, you've got a master's in mental health, let's put it that way. So obviously you want to help people. This probably started far before Trevor died, correct? Have you always wanted to help people?
I'm not sure. I mean, interesting. I worked for 20 years in corporate America as a project manager, so I don't know. I'm not sure I was helping many people.
Interesting. So, and I didn't know, I knew your credentials because I looked at your socials, but I didn't know your story prior. So you worked as a project manager in corporate America and you burned out. How was it? Is that what you were doing when Trevor passed?
Yes. Yeah. And
okay. So that's the pivot.
Yeah. And I think the pivot, if I had to pick a moment, my husband and I really struggled to find services after Trevor passed. Yes. I was actually turned away by a counselor, a therapist, a couple of them, not just one, because talking about and diving into the death, the sudden death, the unexplained death of a child was too hard for them. And they didn't feel that they could support me the way I needed. And I'm very well aware, having this degree, that they did what they needed to do ethically.
Absolutely.
If you're not trained and you can't support it, you don't take on clients. That's their ethical role.
Yes.
But I knew at that point, and I remember saying to my husband, if I ever get to shift gears, I need to show up in that service sector, because there has to be support.
I have been silently crying the whole time, Kathy. That's why I wore these glasses, and that's why I didn't put on makeup today. Just because, the world needs you, and the world needs this story so much. And just the way that you fought through so courageously of everything, and then packaged it up so nicely. That's the human experience to me. We want to leave people better than we found them, and something was missing. And you said I could do that. And I very much try to do the same thing in a very different way. But I want to tell you a story that you don't know about me, and I don't know if anybody else does either. But, I came from a divorced family, and that can affect you. And I thought that I wanted to be a counselor because I had a great counselor that helped me through that. And I started out in psychology in my undergrad, and they just kindly patted me on the head during the first round of clinicals and said, "You're not going to do it. It's not for you." And I'm so thankful because there is no, I'm crying in this interview, Kathy. The compartmentalization that was going to have to happen for that is unreal. It was not in the cards. And that man that was, in charge of me as my advisor, he had been doing it for almost 40 years at that point. And he was he's been doing it for 40 years now. So, that was 15 years ago. But praise God, because he's the just the space you hold for people is insane. And he's like, so I get it. Like, you're super bright, but like, let's try to figure out what we can do, because I don't know that this is going to be it. And, you know, I am so grateful, because what I can do is things like this, an interview, and provide a space for somebody. What I can do is help them get their message heard. You've got such a huge message. You've got such a big, bright light in you. I figured out how to do that on social media. I figured out the algorithm, you know, so that's things that I've been able to tackle that weren't emotional. But then I get to hear the behind the scenes in the meantime and help people that have really good, a lot of different people that have really good messages, bring those to light. And I am so thankful for the people that didn't work with you, because that made you create this and us be able to have this moment. And gratitude, no matter if people are spiritual, religious, you know, how they, you know, align themselves. Gratitude is what I see as the thread of the, I don't want to say successful. Success is a moving target. It's different for everybody. But I want to say the resilient. And there's so much resilience in your story. So tell me how you have found some of the gratitude, because I understand you're not grateful for loss, but how have you found the gratitude to move forward and reclaim that hope?
I've always been supported.
Good.
I've always been supported. You know, even on those hard days, there was something there that helped me see to the next day.
And there are going to be a lot of hard days, right?
Yeah, there are. There are. And I'm not done with the hard days.
Yep.
I know that. I mean, August 21st is the anniversary of Trevor's death, which is why it's so interesting that the book is launching on August 12th. My husband immediately was like,
that is interesting.
Verse 12. And I'm like, I know. So those little things, like even as I say that, I get chills because I know there's something else that's navigating some of this, right? And I still have chills, so just saving that for a moment. And so it's those things. When I feel Trevor closest to me, if you look at the cover of the book, there's a white feather. And that white feather is not that specific white feather, but even on my laptop, I have a white feather. Because along my journey, there have been numerous times where white feathers have appeared that there shouldn't be white feathers.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a struggle for me now because I have a flock of chickens, so I see feathers all the time.
Right.
But
right.
I could be somewhere, not in my yard, and I'll be like, one time we were sitting in a restaurant and literally a white feather fell right in front of me and landed. Those are the things that I can't deny.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that. There is resilience for me, and I know that. And I can sit in the trenches with someone else that is where I was 10 years ago. I know I can do that. And I trust that Source, God, the universe, somebody brought me through this experience so that I could do that. And so there's my gift. That's what I walk away with.
If you didn't lose Trevor, and again, we're not grateful that Trevor's gone. So don't mistake me, Kathy. Don't mistake me, internet. Don't mistake me. We're not grateful in that way. But we have to find some joy after that, because there's nothing we can do. There's absolutely nothing that is going to bring him back. So that's the work that you do. And that's the gift that you can bring, is helping others through that. And had you have not gone through it yourself, you couldn't bring this gift. And I truly believe, no matter who you think created this universe, there was a creator that had that planned. I don't think it's coincidence. I don't believe in any of that. So it's like, I understand that the hardest moments of my own life, which were different than yours, but the hardest moments of my own mental health struggle as a person with diagnosed bipolar, I'm living life every day. COVID, the pandemic, we could go into like episodes and episodes on how that affected people like me, but if I wasn't this way, then I couldn't share my story. And I have a support group of 14,000 people. I'm not a clinical professional by any means, but I do know what it's like. And I can help support a human through that just by listening. And that's been, people can say what they want about social media, and that's fine. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of negativity. Well, I have figured out a way to cultivate the best parts of it, and human connection would be at the top of that list. And without social media, you and I would have never been connected because, Hannah posts about our networking meetups on a social media group. That's how I met you. So I get people a lot that are burned out. I get entrepreneurs that don't understand socials or don't want to. They tell me all the negative things, and I'll listen. Kind of like when you intake, I'm sure, a person that's gone through grief, you'll listen. Of course, there's a terrible thing that's happened to them that's traumatic. They have PTSD. That's essentially their dysregulated nervous system. I mean, I know the terms. But then, after that, it's what we do next that actually matters. We have to accept it, and that's a big stage of grief, right? Is accepting that it happened, it's real. Nothing we can do to change that. Nothing I can do to change my diagnosis. I was born this way. I was picked for this journey, just as you were. And regardless of who did the picking and who wrote the story, I love people that pick up the pen and just literally blaze a trail for other people. That's where I find hope. And so my social media is full of hope because I follow people like you and because I share messages of encouragement. I also share some unhinged memes now and then. I like to keep it real. But
It's healthy.
it's people that, there's this writer here in my hometown, and I've done several of her, I think 2 of her Bible studies now. And, I love that she and I sit at a computer probably at the same time in the same city. And the thing that actually connects us, we don't get together, but the thing that connects us is social media. I get to see immediately what she's written and vice versa. And we are in the same sphere. I could go to the coffee shop and meet up with her, but I don't have to because we can be connected to people across the world. You and I aren't in the same city. We weren't in the same sphere of influence, but we are now. And to me, that's a blessing. There's a million different things that people can do with their gifts, but those that sit down and package it up so nicely, like you did, and take the time to process their own things so they can help others, that's amazing. And for anybody that's listening, please go and recommend Kathy's book. As an author, I can't tell you how much it helps. Maybe you don't need to read it right now. Maybe this isn't something you've gone through. But buy a copy of it for somebody in your life that could use it, or share a link, with somebody, even the ebook. It's very affordable. I went and looked at it. I want to talk a little bit, just because as authors, we understand those clicks and just those views really help us out. It really does help spread our message organically. And that's a big part of who I am too. I understand we don't have infinite advertising dollars. These are just little projects that are on our heart. It's not, some big publishing company and, some big pony show. So I want to help spread your message because you took a lot of time and heart to put it together. So I want to talk about, I love the title of the book, Tapestry of Loss. Talk to me about why you chose tapestry.
I think because there were so many different threads to what we were experiencing. It was my grief, it was my husband's grief, it was our grief as a unit,
Yes.
It was my older son's grief, it was my
Yes.
younger son's grief, it was us trying to be employees during all of this. The understanding how it impacted my health, because I think I mentioned I was later diagnosed with breast cancer, and so I began to understand how the body keeps score.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
So there was
yes.
that. There was, oh, gosh, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and the grocery store there is Wegmans, right? It's a big,
Yeah.
well-known store generally. But something changed after Trevor passed. Walking into Wegmans and seeing, when you walk into Wegmans, there's the produce section. Trevor loved cherry tomatoes. So I could no longer walk into Wegmans. Not to mention it was just dysregulating for me to try
Yeah.
to walk in there. It was too much, too big, too fast, too many people. If it was a tough day for me, I couldn't trust that humanity was going to be nice that day. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
so all of these things that I had to relearn
Yeah.
about me and my own identity, um, the grief brain that came with this loss. I suddenly
Yeah.
couldn't think of words, and I could go on. There were
Mm-hmm.
so many different levels and layers and avenues of how this one event impacted my family. And that's where it came from. Like, it was a thread thing. There's
Yeah.
no, it's so, yeah. I don't know
Well,
if I
I'm
did a
like
good job
I'm an,
explaining.
oh, you did. I'm like a quilter and a needlepoint gal. So, to me, tapestry is meaningful. And I figured, you were intentional. It's the title of your book. So I figured there was a good intent there. But it's beautiful because it paints a very vivid picture for somebody that sews, right? And a tapestry can be many things, and as it ages, it can also change. A tapestry is not going to be the same at the beginning as it is at the end. And your journey is always going to be changing. And that's
Yes.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And, you went from like corporate America, which I did too, but you go from corporate America where things are pretty black and white. You're a project manager, you've got deadlines, it's this way only. And now there's a lot of gray in your life, I bet. It's not a one size fits all solution. So how has that changed you and your joy for what you do?
Mm. Well, I'm still very tired at the end of the day, but
Sure,
I
different
always
type of tired.
that it's a different kind of tired, and I always come back to that gratitude. Well, I'm tired for my own business and for my
Yes.
own things I want to be doing. Where when I was working for corporate America, I would come home exhausted, but I was exhausted for somebody else's
Yep.
ideas, and So I'm grateful. That's a gift of my day
Mm-hmm.
now.
Absolutely.
And I already lost what I was saying. Sorry, already
Well,
lost.
I mean,
Remind me
it's
what the
true
question was.
though. Well, we were talking just because I was in corporate, not for as long as you were, but like, it's true. I was even in more of a creative role, which I'm a very creative gal. But like, it still isn't the same as when you're tired on your own terms. You're working on your own terms. And when you've got something like an idea or something, a purpose that's, lit inside of you, that kind of tired is beautiful. That kind of tired is life giving. It's hard. It's not easy, so don't mistake it. Like, it's not glamorous, but it's a gift. It's a major gift that you're sharing with others, and that kind of space to hold for them is a lot too, especially on top of your own. So I can imagine that it is tiring, but in a very fulfilling way. And if
Yes.
people, it's kind of, let's just leave it at this. It's kind of an if you know, you know.
Hmm.
There are clients that I've worked with. You're not going to hit it off with every client. You're not going to knock it out of the park for every client because it's just, human to human. You got to have that right fit. Not everybody's going to see things exactly as you are or see the vision. And, you're not always going to jive, but the ones that you do and the ones that you help big and the ones that you see get the shift, it makes it all worth it. It makes every moment of tiredness absolutely worthwhile. And
Yes.
somehow, in the middle of client work, grief of your own, a family, a wife, a mother, all these things that never stopped, you took time to write the book and give people some practical takeaways. And I love that. I'm a scholastic gal. So you talk about something that has like that component, because I did end up finishing out my psychology degree. I was halfway done. So I was like, I do want to just practically have this. And then I just I added on communication. It was luckily not too far along where I couldn't. So, I ended up with 2 degrees and ended up on a communication path. But, the psychologist needs a publicist. The psychologist needs a social media person. And
Hmm.
so people that are in clinical settings such as yourself, you don't have time to do all of those other attributes. And so I love that I can be an extension of people's field of work without actually being the person doing the work, but I can still help. I look at myself as like being a helper to somebody, being an extension of their work, but not having to be engrossed in just one. Because when I was in corporate America, I was engrossed in one business. I was, in the trenches of one brand. Well, now I can't even tell you in the last year how many brands I've got to help and build and share messages for. And that's beautiful. That's really, it takes a lot of guts and tenacity to put yourself out there and to change and pivot. And you've done it. Plus, you've done the schooling behind it, which I did too. I went and furthered my education. And I find that resilient people are grateful and usually seek education, formally or informally. That tends to be my experience. But for those that aren't, find a Kathy. Find a person that has done it and do the work with them. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, Kathy. I love the story, and I love that now you'll have this baby, this book that exists forever, that talks about Trevor. And so that's a memorialization as well. As a creative person and a writer myself, things that I do, even just this podcast, they'll exist. And I think that's beautiful. We have the ability to self-publish these days. We're in an era of technology. 20 years ago, you wouldn't be self-publishing and I wouldn't be talking to you on the internet. It just wasn't a thing, and right. Now it's like the sky's the limit. I can hit Amazon and, do it myself, and I can work with another company. And I just love the community that you can find online if you look for it. Yeah. So I hope people who are grieving, or just any other human that's got something going on. I talked about a mental health support group, that I found and kind of started online, because I found that there was a lot of women's mental health groups, but there wasn't some for specifically what I was dealing with. And I was like, well, I can start a Facebook group. I don't have to be a clinical psychologist to do that. Like, I can support other people. And one of the things I wanted to make sure to say is, first of all, now your services are available, whereas you had a hard time finding a service like yours. Now that's available. Your book is now available, so that's a great resource. I mean, awesome. Like, what a huge progress. But then, we can be that for other people without having any kind of degree. We can be a listener. I can't maybe help them as much as you can, but I can absolutely offer an ear and a hug and a note of encouragement. Those small things do still mean something. I have struggled in the past with inaction because I didn't know the right action to take. I've struggled of like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, because, we all get in our head. Like, I get in my head just when I like order at a, drive-through window. So like, it can happen. But I think the best course of action is absolutely offering an ear if you don't have the words to speak. And I loved the advice that I found when I was looking to research this interview of asking a story if you don't have one to share, asking a story of a loved one. So since you are well educated in your field and you saw something that didn't exist and you've now created it and multiplied, I love that. I love how hope floats and it grows if we share it with others. I feel like, and maybe you don't, but this is a great conversation. We didn't talk about this prior. I feel like the opposite of grief is hope. Because I think grief comes from a lot of love, loss, obviously. You love somebody and that, grief happens. But to me, the antithesis of something like grieving a child is hope. Because what else brings you through it? Is there another good example or thought process on that?
I think because grief in itself is so isolating, that there is a degree that people need to find a blueprint, if you will, yes. Like in their own self. Like I said, like internally reference how you can feel. So I would say that is also a huge component of getting through grief, is finding those resources, even if I get on a call for 40 minutes and teach somebody those resources,
Yes.
those resources could make your day, assuming you're a griever,
Right.
easier to deal with. Like, there are things that we can do, even in a spiral, a grief spiral, if you will, that it's going to make that feel better, make that experience just more manageable. And
Yes.
so that's another big thing that I like to work on with my clients, is like helping them understand like what's in their toolbox that they can
Yes.
use for those tough days. Like I couldn't go into the grocery store 10 years ago, but now I have tools and I could do it. And so
Yeah, and
that's
that's a great thought process for the future, because maybe somebody listens to this today and, you know, they're lucky that they haven't experienced something like this. But in the future, perhaps there's loss and grief, right? We don't know the future. So, and particularly if you live for a while, there will be something. So, no matter if it's, you know, a child or just a loved one or a close family friend, I like in what you just said, your toolbox. I like in that. So I'm somebody that's experienced, you know, trauma, and I've got panic attacks associated with that. So I had to have a toolbox so I don't have a full-blown panic attack. You know, it started out where I went to a counselor because I was like, man, my mom says I'm having a panic attack and I don't like this. I don't ever want to go through it again. It's scary. You feel like you're going to die sometimes. And so then I was, you know, as we talked through what the root of the issues were, and we developed a toolbox, and there's things that I can go to stop that usually. And it's been a very long time since I've experienced a full-fledged one. And now I can self-regulate. And is it perfect? No. But will it stop the spiral? You know, you go through a grief spiral. People go through that with anxiety and depression. You know,
Yes.
they go through those ups and downs. And so this is no different. And one of my biggest things mental health-wise that I always want to just share when I can online is we should be treating mental health as physical health. Your leg is broken, you get it fixed. Well, if your grief is broken, you need to get it fixed too.
Yes, absolutely. I hear from so many people that they go to their doctor after experiencing a loss, and their doctor's response is, here's a script.
Here's script. Absolutely.
And I
And
think,
no
oh
further
gosh,
information on those medications and their side effects, by
yes,
the
they
way.
don't tell them the longevity of trying to get off that script. They
Yeah.
don't tell them what it's doing behind the scenes, and it and having, you know, gone through internship and clinicals through
Yes.
mental health degree, I know the impact of those pharmaceuticals, and so
Yes.
that just terrifies me for people, because there's so many other different ways
Yes.
than taking
Don't
that
take
script.
a Band-Aid when you could fix the problem, when you could have a solution. Don't just keep a Band-Aid. I mean, maybe take it temporarily if that's what you need to do. I've taken medication. I mean, my goodness.
Oh yeah, I'm
But
not against it, but
don't rely on it as a fix, and it's only a Band-Aid. You know, it's meant to get you through for healing, and don't prolong the healing. You know, one of the things I saw in my grandmother, and, you know, rest her soul, she lost her husband real early, and she was his caretaker, you know, through cancer and a very early death. And I just saw her be strong. And that's what her generation was kind of told to do, was be strong, you know? Well, I want to see for my daughter, I have a 4-year-old, and I want to see for her that she is real. You know, I say to her all the time, be real. And we say, cry it out. She's a crier just like me, unfortunately. I'm like, girl, I'm so sorry. Like, we are just wired a different way, and I'm real sorry about it, but I'm going to try to help you, because my mom was not wired that way. So I'm sure she was like, what's going on, this girl? You know, she just didn't have that, but I do, and my daughter does. And so I'm like, we're going to cry it out. It's okay. Not all tears are bad. And it's funny because she goes to a sitter twice a week during the summer, and our little sitter, who's, you know, 15, she's like, yeah, Annie told me we were going to cry it out. I was like, yeah, that's right, she did.
Love that.
I was like, she did. Like, we cry it out and then we move on. And I'm like, did she rally? And she was like, oh yeah, she was fine. I was like, okay. And, you know, I'm big on affirmations. You know, that was one of the biggest pivotal moments as a parent for me, was just thinking of what do I want to place into this child? You know, like what's a starting point for her? What do I want to speak into her? I believe we can speak a lot of life into people. And so every year she gets to help me pick a new affirmation and we add on. It's an accumulator. And so she's 4, so she's got 4 of them. And she's already talking about, we just celebrated her half birthday last month, and she's already talking about our next year's affirmation. What will I be next year, Mom? And I'm like, man, if everybody could do that, our generations would leap the progress.
I marvel because even my oldest son and my youngest son, Trevor, was right in the middle of them. When I listen to some of the things that they talk about in terms of mental health,
yes,
I'm like, oh my God, because
amen.
They are, more people need to understand how important it is, and it's not hard work. It's
right.
not difficult to give yourself that cry it out time, right? Don't push the emotions down. Just let them come to the surface and give a space for them to be.
And Kathy, if we do push them down, let's tell the listeners what they get to do later. They get to deal with them in a different way, don't they?
They do. And that's, what I truly think happened with me. And it was 27 rounds of chemo, mastectomy, reconstruction. Yeah. So, I mean, do I know that? No,
but we know that.
The body keeps the score, and that I do know.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, everything metastasizes. I mean, it just, if it's held in, anything, really. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be grief. It could be something you're holding on to from an ex that's just toxic in your body. You know, it doesn't have to be just losing.
That, like, we've talked a lot about grief because of loss, but, you know, there's grief in chronic illness. There's grief in losing a job. There's grief in divorce. There is, you know, there's grief in looking at humanity the way it is some days, you know.
Absolutely.
So I want to make sure that I'm just opening up that so people understand it's not just a death.
I think one of the coolest things about living in this generation, other than what we talked about, like, because I have hope for our children with the mental health shifts that are happening. Like, I've got hope. I spent 2 weeks ago, I spent a week with high school and middle school counselors. I was kind of like helping with an art camp. And so we had campers, but the counselors are in charge of the campers, and I was kind of overseeing them. And I have so much hope. Seeing this generation and, you know, talking, this was an art camp, so we've got all the tisms, you know, and I love it. They're my people. They're my little creative beings, my little weirdos. I love it. And just seeing how they're all dealing with, talking openly about what they're diagnosed with, not all of them, but, you know, like this good handful that just has pride in who they are because they've had that life spoken into them, and they've probably been seeing somebody since they were, you know, school-aged. And I think that's so important, and just was not in my generation. I feel blessed because I had a guidance counselor that really talked to my mom, who was a young mother, and was like, hey, here's some resources. Like, and she took it seriously. She was like, well, whatever you say, you know, like, I will try this with her. And that made, you know, what could be hard as a broken home better. And so I want to just kind of try to wrap it up. I want you to give a book rec, but before that, I want to inspire people who are listening to this, you know, whether it's grief or something else, reaching out for help, whether it's to Kathy because you are really resonating with her story, buying the book, you know, taking a step for your mental health is easy in this era. Like, it could be as easy as emailing a counseling office in your area, or going to betterhelp.com. I mean, like, whatever. Like, I'm for you taking a step today. I'm for you listening to this and being like, I want to do something. I want to read this book. I want to do something with this. Not just, oh, that's nice, and not processing it fully and moving along with your day. If you feel like you need help. And I think we've all been in that denial phase. So if we can pique your interest today and get you to an acceptance and an action phase, that's what I would love to just leave people with. And I would also love to hear, other than your wonderful book, which we've chatted on, any book recommendation that you have, whether it be, you know, mental health or not.
Actually, the Four Agreements.
Oh gosh, what a good book. Kathy, my people. My people. Love
Oh
it.
my gosh. I keep telling my kids they need to read this
Great book.
and adopt it because there's just so much in it about not taking things personally and being impeccable with our word, and
Yes.
I think it's like a manual to be a human almost. You know? So
You know who
yeah.
uses that book and how I encountered it? I'm a like huge reader. Like it is calming for me. It's kind of one of my regulating things that's healthy for me. And I devour information. I love self-help. I've almost had to kind of get off of it though, because you know you can get to the point where you've just
Oh
done too
yeah,
much.
yeah.
So, but I love it, and I recommend so many things. I feel like one of my gifts too is just like being a recommender. Like, you know, I find somebody and I'm like, hey, thinking about this book for you. Like, you know, I did this work. Let me help you. And so the Four Agreements came to me through Al-Anon, and with any kind of a, you know, step program, a sobriety program. Al-Anon is for family members of people who have addictions, but that is the Four Agreements is like the simplest premise that you can read on a human contract. And so
Yeah.
if anybody's interested in, you know, what would be a human contract, you could Google it, whatever. But, and there's summaries out there, but like the book is not that long and it's not super complicated. I hear things about other books from people that are like, it was too much for me. You know, that book was heavy. It was hard for me because they're maybe not used to reading those topics, which is fair. The Four Agreements, I feel like, is a very great book and a very easy bar for somebody to jump into and to take some action steps from.
I have a great summary that I share with my clients when this book comes up. So I'll leave that for any of your listeners that
Yeah,
if they
please.
want to send me a DM on Facebook
Yeah,
and you'll share
absolutely.
the link, I will share the summary with, you
Absolutely.
know, citing who the author is,
Yes.
obviously,
Sure.
because it is really, it's foundational and it's changed the way I've even navigated life in a lot of
Yes.
ways, you know, so.
Yes. And we just pray that our words, as authors too, though they're different, that's the whole reason that we embark on the journey of writing. It's usually not for ourselves. It can be therapeutic and cathartic. Ace, Ace, it's okay. Sorry, that's my dog. It can be therapeutic and cathartic, but it is usually for others, is why we're typically sitting down. Ace, it's okay. It's okay. Ace, Ace, it's okay. Buddy, buddy, I'm right here. It can be just as much in the end for us, but we usually set out to help others and share our information, right? So I love that that author has blessed so many people with the Four Agreements, and it's still being used so practically. You know, it's not a new book, but it has stood the test of time. So fabulous recommendation. I feel like Kathy and I could talk for a long time. But I don't want to take up any more of the listeners' time. One of the things I continually get feedback on is just I'm a yapper, and I am. So I want to leave it there for today, but I just want so many good things for you and your book and your practice. And thank you for not just taking the time today, but just taking the time that you have to serve others, because it is a calling, I believe. And it's not, wasn't mine, you know, didn't work out for me, but I'm thankful for people like you. I can appreciate it, and that's huge. You know, if we could all just appreciate everybody for their gifts and
Yeah,
not try
yeah.
to compare, because they're all different, and the sooner we get over that hurdle, I think the better life becomes. I feel that as I near my 40s and, you know, midlife and blah blah blah, every year I feel a little more alive, and I think that's a positive thing. A little more probably like me, and a little more less like what I thought I was supposed to be. So hopefully people will reach out to you, and I hope they'll grab the book. I will have the link in the description. Good luck with the launch in August.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you
And
for, you know, this conversation today. Enjoyed it.
absolutely, I hope it will foster, you know, my goal in this too was just that this might be a nugget in somebody's mind, and when they need it, they can maybe recall it. And it might not be tomorrow, but in the future, they can use some of these things and have a safe space to, you know, reach out, take action. Don't stay stuck. I know you were stuck in grief for a long time. I have been stuck in my mental health struggle before, and there's no need with all the things we have today. There's no need to struggle alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope everybody has a blessed day. Kathy, I just can't speak enough about the book, and just I want it to be successful because I just believe in the mission of it so much. So thank you to you and your husband for taking the time to just have a little field guide. What a hard topic to have a field guide for, too. But you guys tackled that. So what I usually leave people with is just simply, if you're having a great day today, I am so, so happy for you. Go help somebody else. And if you're not having a great day today, I've been there. And there's so many better things on the horizon. So have hope in tomorrow. And if you are stuck in the moment, listening to this at 2 a.m., I've been there, trying to just consume content, keep your mind off of something. Take one of these action steps. Order that 4 Agreements book. DM Kathy. I would love to just hear. You can DM me on my socials, which is linked on this. You can DM me prayer, and I would love to just have a prayer out there for you in the universe today. So thank you so much, Kathy. Love and light to you, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.